You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
What's up, Nate? You're on the podcast, man. Out of the blank.
Out of the blank? What's happening?
So, the true question is, Nate, what's happening with you, good sir?
Oh, nothing much. Living life in Pennsylvania. You know, life going nowhere. The usual shit. How's things going in Maryland?
I mean, they're going, man. They're going places I don't care for.
Why don't you care for what's happening in Maryland?
Because all the good ass cool people that have stories to tell are not in Maryland. There's a fair amount. We all have.
And where you're going, if you really wanted to travel, you have Baltimore.
That's true.
That's a historic. That's one of the major three, or the big four historic cities. Baltimore, Philly, New York, and Boston.
You should. Hey, can you get headphones on for your phone?
I don't have any headphones. I can air. Is that better?
Yeah, it just sounds a little bit distorted when you were at whatever you were at before. But I wanted to get you on here, man, because I mean I do plan on coming down to Philadelphia where we will podcast in person for sure. But I want to ask you because I met you through doing jet skis at this water sports company, and we both had a fun time doing that. And I think it's really, really like important to highlight our relationship just because there's a giant age gap between us both. And the fact of that didn't mean shit because we were still able to have these joking humor and being able to make fun of each other in like the best way basically possible, where I consider you a brother. Like I've created a friend through you that is like a relationship where we talked on the phone at 2:00 in the morning one night and it lasted till like 6 in the morning and it just flew by.
Yep. Yeah. That all basically sounds accurate. I just think that age really never matters. It just depends on who you can relate to and who's more similar.
Like I see this, like when I first saw you, it was like I saw this guy, shirt off, weird Elvis style hair that had this freaking Pennsylvania tattoo on his shoulder, and I'm sitting there like, he's obviously emotionally scarred.
I mean, that's about accurate. Yeah, sure.
But I wanted to let people know how much of a great person you are, and I wanted to kind of get a little bit of your experience in our relationship out there when it comes to like what do you do professionally, Nate? Like what do you do right now?
Well, currently right now I've been unemployed for an entire year. I was in nursing school for 2 years until I got dicked over by the school, so now I'm trying to transfer my nursing credits to somewhere else to be an RN. I already have a bachelor's degree in 5 years at Penn State. So all in all, I spent 8 years after high school trying to get a meaningful degree where I can make enough money to live a decent, respectful life.
You know what's crazy though is when it highlights the true aspect of a college education doesn't even get you shit anymore.
Yes and no. It really does depend on what you study. I know I was friends with a lot of engineers, and I know Penn State's a damn good university for engineering. We're usually ranked within the top 10 every year. In fact, 2 years ago, I think Penn State just got we matched with MIT with research funding. So Penn State's known to be an engineer school, but I have buddies that went into petroleum engineering, and they're making $200K.
Shit. Well, when you decided to do the like nursing program, what was your plan with that? Just being a nurse or being a doctor?
Yeah, I mean the starting off was always to be a registered nurse. My undergrad set me up for grad school quite a bit. I just didn't know what grad school I wanted to get into. I was looking into occupational therapy, physical therapy, chiropractic, medicine, physician's assistant, registered nursing, and I kind of just started shadowing around and realized that nursing is the way to go.
Where'd you get your start? Like wanting your, I guess your passion for being a nurse, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I've always, I always like helping people out. I kind of like the environment of the hospital. I grew up with my mom's side of the family. My mom's a registered nurse, and she has a sister as a registered nurse, and she has another sister as a nurse practitioner. So it's kind of always run in the family.
Because a lot of people see that job, like I think of what is it, Meet the Fockers, where what's his name, Gaylord.
Ben Stiller, but I forget what character he played.
He played Gaylord. That was his name,
but
Gaylord
the
Focker.
actor Ben Stiller in the first Meet the Fockers. Yep.
Yeah, well, he wanted, like, it was like you say nurse, especially back then. People look at you like, you know how offended people get when you're a guy nurse. It's a little bit weird.
It can be. It truly depends on what you specialize in nursing.
I think it's ridiculous to even put a notion or a gender on a job like that. Because first of all, if you're willing and you have the passion to pursue anything like that, you shouldn't be looked at because of your gender or race.
Yes and no. I agree with you to a point. I can see why people would be weirded out of having a male nurse in the labor and delivery room.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that too when it comes to a babysitter who it's more likely that a girl's going to get hired for a babysitting position, even if the guy is more qualified, because a lot of people don't want a guy at home with their kid.
Yeah, but I get that, but like whenever you're delivering babies, it's a very intimate. The woman is in a very vulnerable, intimate position. So for her comfort, I can see why many males don't become a certified nurse assistant or RN to be in the labor process. However, where we shine as male RNs, and that's kind of what Ben Stiller did in the movie, is we dominate the ICU and the emergency department. That's all mostly males.
So that's a lot of on-hand thinking. That's all like quick reactions and being able to spontaneously handle a problem, right?
Yep. And that's what something you and I've talked about before. I truly think I have adult ADD, and I just have never been diagnosed, but I get bored very easy.
So you
I can't stand doing the same thing day in and day out. So one thing that I've always looked forward to is thinking about working in the emergency room, where every day you could have 100 new cases every day, one day after another. Sure, you'll get a few reruns, but not like any other desk job where you just sit around and it's just the same mundane bullshit every day.
It sucks too, because a lot of those people, you can tell, are truly not happy being in an office position. I think we just get too comfortable with making money and just getting through life. We don't ever focus on what we truly want anymore.
Yeah. And even that's a fine line. I mean, I'm proud to find a passion to help people, but at the same time, not to sound like a sellout, if there's a job that can give me $200K a year, I'll probably take it, because money anymore is freedom.
And that's not your fault for thinking that way. It's just how the world works. It runs on a money hungry world. We don't think about anything but trying to get ourselves through the day. And people like you that have a passion, that want to pursue something like helping others. First of all, anybody that's been to the hospital understands how much of your faith and how much of your everything, basically everything, relies on your nurse and people that are providing for you. You literally look at them like the savior to everything. And when you're in there in an emergency room and you have these hands-on situations, can you give me a list of situations you've had to deal with, or cases you've heard of, that where your job would be like the most like important to be focused on, like some scenarios?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Like some scenarios. Like, give me some scenarios that you've experienced where you've had to on-hand think in an emergency situation with your job.
I've never, I mean, as a student, because I never, passed yet, even though I should have, but I never really passed. So as a student, I don't have as much experience, um, as one would have if they worked 6 months to a year down in the ED. I just have a few stories, but
Tell me a few stories, man. Those are important. Those few stories you have are important, man.
Yeah, I mean, the one we were as a student, I had to run behind an ambulance, to see how the pre-hospital care is, and I was able to revive an 85-year-old woman, who's who was cardiac arresting, and she only survived a few more days after that, but we were able to bring her back so she could, say bye to her family.
Dude, you revived an elderly woman?
Yeah, helped revive. Yeah.
How the hell are you gonna downplay that and say, well, that's not really an important story? That was a fucking amazing one right there. That's already more than I've done. You know what I did today? I had a hot pocket and I felt like shit afterwards.
Well, like I said, I mean that was a very, I mean
That's
just one story compared to what people are
Oh
doing
yeah,
every
yeah.
day.
Well, I mean, I could compare what I do to Martin Luther King, and I'd look like some just douchebag. But at the same time, you already have accomplished much more than anybody has in this life, doing with that little thing you've experienced. Because when you're dealing with a lot of people, choose an office job for one specific reason that gets them money and gets them through the day. That is a comfortable option. Another reason is they do not like dealing with other people. They find people so dragging and just detriment to others. You, Nate, have a personality that is out there that the world needs to experience because you are able to cooperate and be a friend to everyone. You have a likable personality, which makes you great for a scenario of dealing with the public, especially in emergency and traumatic situations. I think you definitely downplay yourself way too much on how important of a person you are in this world that lacks creativity.
Well, thank you. I actually do appreciate that, and that means a lot to hear. And I mean it's. I mean, I don't know how to take about downplaying. It's just, where I am right now, I just wish I was a lot farther along in life, like I was expecting to be. Hypothetically, I was supposed to graduate RN school 2 years ago.
Yeah, but look, sometimes plans get put on hold, but you can still accomplish them no matter the age, man. Maybe it's not as fast as you wanted them to have. I was planning by 22 years old to be swinging from the chandeliers of the Playboy Mansion, but I got one more year left until that comes up, so we'll see if I can hit that goal. But the whole idea is when you set up there, everything you set in your mind on a goal or expectation of where you want to be is not a goal that's never going to be achievable just because it hadn't happened at that time.
Yeah, that's true, and that's kind of where I'm at now. Where I had to take a year to figure it out, but yeah, I know this is what I want to do, so I just have to get back into A school and complete it, no matter what the cost.
Don't you get kind of scared with being a nurse, like all the kind of justifications that fall on you, at least all the rules or responsibilities you have?
Not so much. They train you really well for it. And for the most part, as long as you're trained well enough. What's really nice about any kind of medical, I shouldn't say any, when it comes to the hospital setting, it's a team environment, and that's what I like. You're not on your own. So whenever you have a few patients that you have to take care of, there are signs and signals depending on what the disease processes are, where if they get too bad, then you contact the doctor.
Yeah, who
and he'll
specializes
bring a
in
team
that.
in. So it's never just you. You're never just on an island by yourself.
Yeah. Well, I think that happens to do because there are so
don't
many.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, it is scary to have people's lives in your hands, sure, but it never falls just on you.
It's the whole concept of that there's so many different things that can go in all these different turns. You have to have people with multiple specifications and classifications on different, at least parts of the medical business, because let's say you're dealing with a certain disease and you specify in that type of disease. If another thing pops up, you have to have someone there that has another thought on it to help come down to the conclusion of what's going to work for you. Because
Yeah,
the problem, a lot of people say, "Oh, I hate doctors because they're so willing to give you medication and it never seems to be the right one." The problem is what works for you, that person is going to work for somebody completely different, which makes
yep,
the whole medical game a giant guessing game. Is this going to work? Let's try it. It's all about trying things and seeing what's
yeah,
going to come to the conclusion without causing the least harm to a person. I know that probably pisses you off hearing somebody that would say, "Oh, doctors are just so willing to give you medication, get on with you." That might be how it is some of the time, but that's not all justifications on doctors. I've known specific ones that have been extremely bad, and I've known specific ones that have been extremely wonderful. The whole option is how willing are you to your passion? Are you looking as nursing being a passion, or are you looking at it as being a job that is sustainable? You have to look at it in two different lights. Do you really give a shit about the person that's sitting on the table in front of you? Are you going to be willing to go out of the way to help that person? If you've ever seen the show Scrubs, you can see where, yeah, JD, where he goes above and beyond to help each and every single one of his patients and create relationships with them, whether they live or they die. The whole factor is that obviously you can't bond 100% to your patients, but when you do, you create a realness where they feel like they're not just being some person being experimented on or trying to be fixed, an object that's been broken. They're seen as a person that has a life that has a chance and has time still left here, not completely gone. And yes, there are those cases where people do face, these types of things. But once you start thinking in that mindset of how the world is just everything's just a paycheck, you completely lose the most passionate jobs in the business, which are nursing programs, babysitting programs, teaching programs, all these things that stem from the basis of foundation of our society and how people are. I know that's a lot I just said, but it's hard because getting your information from what you're telling me about nursing, like I mean, we've talked about it a little bit, but not like as much as we have right now. And it boggles my mind how people like, especially me, I've been at short with this sometime with some bad doctors, give doctors a bad name when there's people like you that deal with these emergency situations. You were there when I was hit by a jet ski, Nate.
yep,
You were there when I went to the hospital ridden in an ambulance.
yep,
Okay? That's a true story I've said on this podcast, and now there's proof. I have a witness here that was there for it. Now, went to the hospital in a wheelchair where I thought my back was broken. Now, luckily, I only had torn muscles and I was okay. Um, but the whole idea is my story when I was there were four people on the beach that got paralyzed that day. I literally witnessed a daughter realizing she was not going to be able to move her body ever again while her parents were holding her hand and crying. It brought me to tears. But the whole idea was there were nurses, doctors there right when they needed them. Those people needed them to be there to let them know we're here with you every single step of the way. And if you're able to highlight that and be able to bring in something like that into your emergency room, you have to realize how important that is to everything.
yeah. And I mean, kind of what you were talking about before about how some people don't like how some of our health system is set up. A lot of that is, or how some people don't like what doctors do. A lot of that is just education, patient care education of you have to explain people why a heart medication doesn't work, why a antidepressant didn't work on this person, why we can't snap our fingers like Thanos and fix something. A lot of that is just education because I'm starting to realize that the American population is just really, really dumb.
You just started realizing that?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, look, all right, hold
really hit
on.
hard
We
in
got to play.
2016, but I'm starting to realize it more and more
We
that
got to play a little
that
bit of devil's advocate here, Nate. So I have to realize: is is America dumb, or are we just so willing to put the blame on somebody else?
um
I think it's a little bit of both.
before a lot of this other stuff within our government happened, I would say the first one of we like to put the blame on someone else, but now we have people literally reading conspiracy theories and passing that as news. So I think we're dumb.
Hey,
I think we're very stupid.
Don't discredit my theories, damn it.
Hey, as long as you have factual information that's fact, I'll back you up. But
you know that movie? Hey, you know that movie Men Who Stare at Goats?
What's that?
You know that movie Men Who Stare at Goats with George Clooney?
Which one with George Clooney? Which one?
The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Oh no, I haven't seen that one.
The dude killed a goat with his mind, and they were practicing remote viewing and all these psychological abilities. That's a real government program that happened here in Maryland.
Oh yeah, no, there were a lot of government programs.
I think
that tried but didn't work.
I think with a lot of conspiracy theories, what makes them a conspiracy is that it's untold information that we usually find out later. It's why a lot of conspiracy theories find out to be truth, because we find out later down the road, like, oh shit, that did happen, but it was getting hidden from us. Now, there are some that are completely ridiculous that I don't fully understand, like Alex Jones spouting about how the frogs are being turned gay by crop sprays.
What I'm about to say now, you can, some conspiracy theories, as long as it doesn't hurt another person, to be honest, I don't give a shit. Have fun with it, believe it, or don't believe it, talk about it, that's one thing. Now we're getting conspiracy theories now that are getting people killed. You mean like vaccinations? The shooting in Pittsburgh synagogue. So some guy thought that the Jews were taking over. I just saw some other guy, his defense attorney from a murder, said that he was so wrapped in the QAnon or whatever that is. The pipe bombs that were sent to the Democratic leaders. That was some nut job that believed in conspiracy theories. I think a lot of, like, with anything, not just conspiracy theories, I think it's where people choose to run with it and choose how to act on it. Yeah, which is fine. I mean, the ongoing joke now is the Area 51. I find that entertaining. I hope no one really does it, because I do think the Air Force will shoot and kill people. Well, the whole idea was the guy Bob Lazar, who actually I did one of my first fill in the blank topics on. He did expose Area 51 and the government working with flying saucers. The Nazis had created them. That's a real thing. Now, his documentary is out on Netflix after he's been called a conspiracy theorist and a nut job for 40 years, discredited by everyone, and he's been completely watched under surveillance under the government for a very long time now, discredited, all this shit. His documentary is on Netflix, and he realized everybody's now awakening to how real of a person he actually was. He wasn't a liar. He was a real person that got discredited, and the government tried to push him under the rug as some crazy asshole. Now, he came out and said, don't storm Area 51. You're not going to find any aliens there. And people are like, why is that? And he goes, because all this stuff is hitting in a whole nother sector called Sector 7 where I worked at. Hangar 14. Oh. I thought it was Area 52. I heard talks about that too, but either one, yeah. Yeah, well, he was talking about that, and then now he recently came out in the news saying everything he said was fake bullshit. No, everyone's like, see, he was a liar all along. I'm like, no, he said that to stop people from storming Area 51 because there were 660,000 people signed up to storm it, and the government was definitely not going to let them fall onto their property without getting some damage done to the people that were going to be in it. Oh, no, the people, and that's what, I didn't even know about the guy you were talking about, but what I was saying about, and these conspiracy theories are fun until it gets someone hurt, but what I was talking about is there was someone that stormed 51 by themselves, and they got gunned down. Like two years ago, they were in a truck or something, and they ran Area 51, and they got shot and killed. So yeah, well, that was what I'm saying is these are all conspiracy theory is fun to talk about as long as no one gets killed. If you have a million Americans storming 51, they're all going to get slaughtered.
That's what I'm saying. The theory right now is that with all these people signed up to storm Area 51, the government is not going to let that happen. So the whole factor is there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be hurt. So Bob Lazar, the guy that worked close by Area 51 and exposed element 115, which is this element on the table that has like, we can't create it and make it last longer than like, I think it's like 5 minutes or something. But when the Roswell incident happened, there were over 40 pounds of it taken from there and being able to, it was from another planet basically. So
yeah.
Now he exposed a lot of like flying saucer type inventions the Nazis had created. I mean, most of our space program comes from Nazi invention. I didn't know if you knew the NASA space shuttle is a Nazi invention. It's by Werner von Braun. It's a construct that we took from Operation Paperclip, where we got a bunch of Nazi scientists that actually helped us win the space race. Now, learning about this stuff, you start learning about these things when you hear a guy that has came out with a documentary that literally the only reason he got fired and discredited from area or whatever the government that was dealing with these flying saucers and stuff was because his wife was cheating on him. If you have time, I recommend you looking up this Area 51 Bob Lazar documentary on Netflix, because the FBI tapped his phones. He was signed that he was allowed, that they were allowed to do that. He gave them like litigation to do that. He was like, yes, you may listen in on my phones. I have nothing. I'm not going to expose anything. A secret is a secret. I got it. Well, they find out later down the road, before he figured out, his wife was having conversations with another man. Now, they brought this to his attention. So he actually found out about his wife cheating on him through the government. The government was like, is this going to be a problem? Is this going to create tension in your life that is going to cause you to get pissed off and expose our secrets? And he was so upset and so hurt, he just said, I don't know. And then he left, and he knew he was going to be watched. So he went and tried to handle everything back at home. He comes out about this in a podcast with Joe Rogan, and he comes out and starts talking about it like, hey, talking with his wife and stuff. It's after he handled that, he got drunk with some friends and brought them to one of the testing sites for one of these flying saucers at night. He brought a bunch of friends drinking beer. And he said he was sitting in the documentary. This is on there. In the documentary, it's him and this guy talking on the front of a truck. And they're just sitting there watching these flying saucers, these objects. Really, all you see is these lights just go up, fly, super fast down the runway, then land immediately in a way a plane can never land. Just like immediately go straight down. And he starts just getting drunk. And as he becomes more drunk, he starts talking shit with his buddy about how they could steal these flying saucers and go flying off. And this is about 2 hours watching these things. Next thing you know, a fucking light rolls up to his feet. Just a little light ball rolls up to his feet. And they look down. It's a flashlight to a dude's scope. And next thing you know, flashlights and red dots pop on them and go around them all in a giant circle. The military was listening into their conversation for the whole time they were there. And the one dude dropped his scope and it ran right in front of his feet. You see that happen and you hear that from him and you hear his accounts of that, you immediately think, oh shit, like you're in some shit then. There's definitely some secret stuff going on at Area 51. I mean, if we have a space program that Ronald Reagan established to discover alien life, and he literally quoted in one of his speech sayings, I don't think we should think we're the only ones out in this universe. It's a highlighted true possibility. But I believe when it comes to how dangerous people can take conspiracy theories, or maybe something that we don't fully understand, and then try and find a simple solution like storming it to get the information, the government keeps secret shit secret for a reason.
Yes and no. I mean, I'll agree and disagree with you. I'll agree with most of everything you just said, except for, you were using him as an experiment, saying how a plane can never land up and down. With our military budget, we were able to create a plane that we're using now in the Iraq War that lands up and down. So you got to remember, the front at least is Area 51 is a military research facility.
Yeah, but this.
So whenever we're dropping, which I don't agree with politically, but whenever we're dropping $600 billion a year for new military equipment, yeah, they're going to want to protect that for the next war that breaks out, and that's why it's so secretive.
I know what you're talking about. You're kind of talking about the propulsion, like where the propellers on like an airplane, or I know I say propellers on an airplane, but it's like the Avengers movie with that giant floating like thing they have, that how they have like 4 propellers on each wing or whatever, and they can turn it at different angles to go in different directions. The whole idea is we still don't have today in the military any type of plane that can do a UE on a dime, turn a complete 180 degrees. This actually goes back to Operation, I think it was Roaring Skies or something like that, where a bunch of, it seems the most common kind of, I guess you would say, examples are used by plane pilots that fly at night. That is a dangerous position, but they've all been known to see these types of weird lights that fly and do these things that plane cannot do. Now, whether the government is keeping some secret information from us on some military technology they have, I don't know. But the whole idea was we still have not, in any of our technological advancements, been able to find or create an aircraft that can perform a 180 degree turn on a dime. And this thing was all
hold on, that we know of.
That we know of, yes.
World War III breaks out, and the U.S. says, hey, we've been hiding this in the last 20 years so we can defeat the Russians, China, Iran, whoever the next innocent country that we're probably going to attack, whoever that is, they're going to find out if we have that or not. Yeah, I mean, I've heard of those stories as well, and it's hard, not to believe them. But one thing I always think about too, that I talk with other people about, why is it always America? Why aren't there's no way in hell that we're the only country that dealt with this.
There's definitely stuff like, I mean, can you believe that the 500 missing articles for JFK's assassination was released by Donald Trump in 2017, but he still kept 50 of them hidden? Like, why is all this information still hidden?
I don't believe that at all.
Like,
those classified details that he released had nothing to do. I mean, had no new information. That they're going to keep that a secret, whatever happened there.
Yeah. But don't you think it's a little bit ridiculous? Like, there's these stuff that's still hidden and secret from the public, even though we have a Freedom of Information Act that's supposed to expose any secret information and make it open to the public. Like, a lot of the projects that the government has worked on, Project A119, Project Sunshine, where they're testing radiation on corpses of loved ones without telling the people that they're digging up their parents' bodies and testing it on them. Like, we have all these stuff that is public information on the CIA website where it's open information, but no one goes to look it up because it's not hard to find. It's there, but all the information is not uploaded on there. There's still some missing shit that's crossed out or black lined. You're like, what the fuck is this then? What is this?
Oh yeah, and I mean, I agree with complete bullshit, and I'm going to go take a step back from what you were saying of, the CIA testing that kind of stuff. I don't like what the CIA is trying to do, and I learned this through Michael Weston and Burn Notice, and I'm certain that the fictional show, but it brings up the light of what our CIA is doing in all of these other countries, overthrowing, communists or
assassinating public figures,
other leaders like our CIA that we're pumping money into. We don't know what the fuck they're doing.
They do some shady stuff, dude.
And down in Venezuela, how many times did we try to kill Castro? 61 times as a government. I mean, the whole Bay of Pigs. I mean,
Operation Anthropod, dude. Don't even get me started on Operation Anthropod.
We're definitely not the only ones doing this, but it's still, I don't agree with it.
There's so many projects in the government from our government to the other governments that are dealing with taking out left-wing activists. I mean, half of them are just assassination attempts and all these other types of things. Trying to put, Project Anthropod was to assassinate one of this famous left-wing activists, and we ended up putting the bomb in the wrong car and killing a bunch of civilians. Like,
yeah, I believe that.
Like a bunch of stupid stuff that happens.
I believe that.
And then going back to the Area 51 thing, what Bob Lazar commented, and it's actually an article that came out on July 15th of 2019. It says, I have to comment on this Storm Area 51 thing. I do understand it was a joke as someone by someone, but there are a number of people who are actually planning on showing up. This is a misguided idea. Lazar posted on his Instagram with a screenshot of the Facebook event saying, in a 1989 television interview, Lazar famously claimed to have worked on a reverse engineering alien spacecraft technology at a site called S4, located south of the main Area 51 location. He quotes saying, Area 51 is a classified research base. There are no aliens or alien technology located there. Lazar continued on Instagram saying, the only place there was ever any alien technology was at Site 4, south of Area 51 proper. That was 30 years ago. S4 may have moved decades ago, or it is possible no longer being used for the project. He goes, I do not support the movement, so please do not storm Area 51 under my name. He also added at the last moment, that the last time someone attempted to get into Area 51, they were shot. This is no way to go about trying to get information. What is a good idea is the interest in the subject of science and technology, and immediately to change the world we live in. So he's highlighting, don't go storm Area 51 because you might get hurt. And he doesn't want to see people go under his name or just go under bad intentions to try and expose what the government is. But I think the reason why people are all signed up aboard to this is because we're so used to being lied to or suppressed.
Yeah.
You can relate that to the same thing with people with vaccinations, all that new stuff that's coming out about vaccinations. Like apparently there was a mother that just had triplets or something, and she got all of her kids exposed to the vaccination. And then not after like 30 days after they took the vaccination, they all developed mental retardation or a type of mental disability. Do you believe in that?
Yeah, now I'm going to just say that that's all been proven false. All of that's been proven false. That vaccinations work and they don't put anything into it.
But do you think
the only guy, the retard that literally made this conspiracy theory up lost his medical license because it was proven of misinformation.
But do you think it was misinformation, or do you think it was the concept of how we've already experimented on people injecting syphilis, like the Tuskegee syphilis studies or the Guatemalan syphilis studies, where we were injecting people with syphilis to test out a way of creating a better cure and also letting these people suffer to see what syphilis does to the body in full rotation?
I think it's false that I know that happened, and that's definitely a black stain. You should never do that, but that's why we have. I'm a very big believer in it takes a long time, and a lot of it is bullshit. But on how our FDA approves new drugs, there's so many tiers you have to go through before it even hits human trial. Then whenever it does hit human trial, even then it's not going to be on the market for 5 to 10 years. And if they find the smallest thing that's wrong with it, they'll take it out of the market. So, I mean, how many safeguards we have, it's nearly, it's impossible. And you got to remember, the government doesn't give a shit about its citizens and their drug use. Because if they did, we would have Medicare for all. That's all the pharmaceutical companies now.
And so many.
If the pharmaceutical companies can make a dime on a new drug, they're going to do it, and they're going to push it through so that they can make money.
Yeah,
that's 100% accurate.
Well, all these things come out, and all these types of vaccinations are getting people, they're infecting people. I might see a case where there might be maybe a few possible things that have happened where there has been vaccines and stuff that have been kind of tainted in a way, but I don't believe that's the fascination with all of them, and the idea that people are now going with the notion that if you get your kid vaccinated they're going to end up being mentally retarded. I don't think that's true at all, and I think that puts more pressure on someone in the medical industry like yourself, because you're dealing with people looking at you differently. Like if someone starts coming out with information saying that the vaccines are poisoned, you're trying to give a cold shot or vaccination to some person, and next thing you know, he's trying to stab you in the throat, like you're going to kill me with this. No, no, it makes your job harder, puts more pressure on you when you're already dealing with so much with all these random, spontaneous situations that you are faced with.
Yeah, I mean, you would never give a vaccination. You usually never give vaccinations in the ED unless it's to knock someone out because they're being combative. But most likely, you're not going to give an IM shot. Right there, it's probably going to be through the IV if anything like that needs to happen. Now that being said, we still don't know the exact cause of autism, but we do know it's not vaccines. There's a lot of studies, happening. Saying that autism has always been around, it's just been misdiagnosed. We're finding more and more about it, but it's definitely not anything to do with vaccines, and all of that was proven false by the guy who lost his medical license by trying to promote this.
Have you ever heard of the Hoffling hospital experiment?
I may have. I'm not really the best with names, so you'll have to go into the explanation, and then I'll tell you if I.
It's actually a pretty cool study. It's a little doctor study. He took a group of like 22 nurses, and he gave them basically it was an authoritative kind of test. Like you're more willing to listen to your superiors than what the real like facts are. So what he did was at this hospital, he actually did this procedure where he took these 22 nurses and gave them a dosage of medicine to give to their patients. That is a legal dose. It's a lethal dose. Like it's going to kill them. And they all noticed that, and he was like, this is what you have to do. This is what's for the patient. You give this to the patient. And he wanted to see how many nurses would actually go through with it, because either they were listening to an authoritative figure or one of their superiors, or would they act out of what's morally right in their own mind and realize that they're going to kill this patient if they do that, not just following orders. Only 2 of the nurses did not give the medicine to the patient. It was not an actual medicine. It was like a sugar pill or something. But the whole idea was these 20 other nurses did this because they were told by the superior to. They did not think with reasoning, and it caused, and this is what they were trying to highlight with the aspect of what how important the medical industry is to even get a job in that field or anything or specification, because you have to truly have a logical standpoint and also a personal standpoint. You have to have your own thoughts as well, because you can't be completely closed off and be by the book or be a follower. You have to be able to have your own decisions and be able to think on your feet, which I give you a lot of respect for even trying to pursue a career in that field, because that's something where so much relies on you to handle a situation where it seemed like if you mess up, even if it's like nobody could have fixed it, it's like you still take that toll with you. You still think about that. You're still going to go home like, damn, I could have did this, I could have did that, I could have changed this, could have done that. And a lot of doctors face that, and actually what ends most careers for doctors.
Oh yeah, that I believe, and I do have friends that I should have graduated with that tell me stories about that. I mean, again, it's not an everyday thing, but whenever you have a car accident and a 7-year-old doesn't make that, it hurts people and it stays with them. Whenever you have a 9-month-old infant that accidentally drowned and you're there doing CPR with the doctors trying to revive them, it sticks with you. Now that's not an everyday occurrence, but that shit does happen. What you're talking about with your study, do you know what year that happened at?
The Hoffling experiment?
Yeah.
I actually can pull it up right now. I gotta go back to the article.
I mean, I'm just curious.
1966.
which kind of makes sense now. That's all different. Um,
Well, have you seen the Prison Stanford experiment or Stratford experiment on Netflix? That whole thing, where
well, hold on, I have, and we'll get there too in a second. I'm just saying, when it comes to what happened, I don't know if it. When it comes to what you were talking about for the nurses now, I don't know how it changed, but now in nursing school, we are taught that we have to question every single thing the doctor does. Because if not, we could lose our own registered nursing license to practice in the 50 states.
So you believe that the nursing and medical industry has changed, like when it comes to grasp of thinking for yourself?
Yeah, we no longer. I know what you were talking about. We no longer. It's more, that's what I said before. It's more of a team effort now, rather than the doctor says everything and you have to go by what he says. It's more of a, okay, the doctor said this. Well, why? Okay, is it going to harm the patient? The number one. Well, one of the main jobs for RNs is to be a patient advocate. You have to stand up for the patient. So whenever a doctor orders an MRI and it doesn't make any sense, guess what? You're probably not going to push the MRI through. Well, whenever the doctor orders a pain medicine, that's 10 times the lethal dose, you're probably not going to give that without clarification of, hey, why did you want this and not a normal dose? Now, that being said, mistakes still do happen. And with the crisis that's been going on, the opioid crisis that's been going on in the Midwestern, well, the entire United States, but mainly hitting Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and those areas. I just read something the other day about a hospital that, a hospital that a doctor, I think he's being charged with like 40 counts of murder because he was intentionally killing his patients. And the nurses that tried to stop him were harassed or fired. So now the hospital is being sued for millions of dollars.
Yeah, there's been multiple cases of that throughout the years.
That helped kill those patients. They're on the line of losing their license and being charged with manslaughter. So I mean that stuff still happens, but at least now most nursing schools that I know of are teaching. You have to, and a lot really goes into nursing school because you have to know the medications, but you have to know the safety parameters of everything because it's part of our job to try to keep people alive and not, and accidents do happen, but the job is to keep people alive and not actually kill them.
Oh yeah, and what I find really, really fascinating is the fact that a nursing position is looked at more, I guess, less important than a job such as being a doctor. Because I think the doctor refers to you, I'm pretty sure, when it comes to a case scenario with a patient, right? Because they're just brought in to deal with that specific thing, but they know nothing about the person's history. And the nurse, that's the reason why the nurse is there, to help the doctor, but also be able to let the doctor know and give them thoughts on what works for this patient or not.
Yeah, basically the doctor with medical schooling, they know much more about the disease processes and how to better fix them. But yes, I've even helped out many times. Doctors will come into a hospital room.
Like if I come into
meeting the patient for the first time, and they'll ask the nurse and CNA about the vitals, what medication they're on, what caused the what symptoms came up.
You get all the information for the doctor.
You're right about that. Is the doctor will ask, his staff, the nursing staff of what was going on with this patient to make a diagnosis to try to heal him.
Yeah, like if I came into a hospital, you're my nurse, and a doctor walks in, he asks you information on me. You're gonna be like, yeah, he's a bit of an asshole. He doesn't really take his medications. He says he's not gay, but and you do that, but you'd have a personal history with me, and you'd have a reference on who I am, or at least how I am. So then you would equip the doctor with not tools to deal with the certain problems that I might be suffering from, but from being able to, I guess, misdiagnose me or do something in an improper way that might be offensive to me as a person. And that's very, very important when you are a registered nurse, or you are dealing in just being a nurse in general, because you're seen as I guess a tool to a doctor. You're not a tool though. You're a helping hand, and you're a reference. You're somebody that they need to. They couldn't really do their job effectively if you weren't there in the room.
Yeah, yeah, and well, you're absolutely correct with most of what you said, except for your own personal beliefs. I would not refer that to the doctor as long as it wasn't more towards religious base. I wouldn't talk to him about your personality or anything like that. I'll tell him about, hey, you're a Jehovah's Witness. So that means, we can't do any blood transfusions. Hey,
How do you work around that if you can't do a blood transfusion? They just die, don't they, if you can't?
a lot, yeah. I mean, a lot of it is kind of patient education and telling them. And, the main thing about anything medical anymore is the patient has a right. The patient has a right to his or her own care. Now, the patient also has a right to be informed. So you have to mix those two about like, hey, I understand your religious beliefs are X, but if we don't do it, your Y is going to happen.
Yeah, they have to be aware of that. They have to be aware of the problem.
Make the choice of, oh, I'm going to go against my religion to live or not.
Well, even with a passion for helping all these people, how do you sift past through all this like crazy shit that doctors and nurses deal with? Like, why do you still try and pursue it, even though you know there's all these giant freaking roadblocks that come up and all these things?
I mean, no matter what, I mean, the good outweighs the bad. A lot of the people, nurses or doctors down, not so much doctors. I mean, they're a part of it too, but a lot of people are honestly not doing this for a paycheck. It pays well, but it's not, paying an engineer well. But I mean, it's just something, you got to work through, and no matter what, you're helping people. That's the main goal out of every single day is if you can, comfort someone, if you can relieve pain for someone, if you can, be a helping hand, if you can educate someone about addiction, if you can, no matter what it is, you're there to help the population. Now, the ongoing thing is when it comes to EMT, firefighters, and ER and everyone in the ED, emergency department. Whenever you see us, most likely it's going to be one of the worst days of your life.
Yeah, because you already been through so much shit. You got to keep on. You can't just go home. You got to keep dealing with it until your shift's over, and your shift is way longer than any normal shift. Sometimes you only get 3 hours of sleep. You got to pull up one of those hospital beds.
You're thinking of like when someone crashes. If someone crashes right in front of you, you also have to stay on. And everyone else will stay on it and help them out. But like as soon as they get stable, you're done. You're out. It's not like you're not assigned for one patient for their entirety of the hospital stay. So as long as all your patients are stable, you can do report on to the next nurse that's coming on, and you're good to go to leave. But now that being said, I have a story from a guy that I was looking up to who is an ICU nurse in Lewistown, and he went through the nursing program I went through. But he was talking about he had a patient in the ICU. Now again, whenever you're in the ICU, most likely you're on the brink of death for most people. But this patient kept coding for a 12-hour shift. He said that he had about half an hour to 45 minutes to catch up on charting. So for 12 hours, he was in this patient's room with the doctors and a few other nurses and everyone else in the medical career. But for 12 hours, he was either pushing meds to keep him alive, doing CPR, trying to write down what everything's happening because everything needs to be documented. Dose, time, the procedure, everything needs to be documented for that patient. So there were probably five to 10 people constantly in this person's room just to try to keep him alive. And his story just reminds me, one, I don't think I could ever do ICU nursing, but two, when things are that bad, the nursing staff, the people involved in that situation don't have time to take a piss. They don't have time to take a shit. They don't have time to sit down. They don't have time to eat.
Because you got to stay moving. You got to be on your toes constantly. And when a problem arises, you can't just, oh, I'm sorry, but I got to eat my sandwich first. No, you need to handle it before it becomes a bigger problem, and you might lose somebody if you decide to wait.
Yeah, and this all kind of stems from, and again, a lot of people, unless you have a family member in the medical field, unless you have a friend in the medical field, unless you've ever dated someone in the medical field, you wouldn't know this. Now, again, I look up to him for the story he told me about keeping this patient alive. But what angers me is what kind of happened. I don't even know when this happened. It's been within the last 6 months, but everything's been meshing together because of how many awful things are happening every day anymore. But there was a senator, or I think it was a state senator in Oregon or Washington, who had no idea what the fuck she was talking about. And she said that for that state, the nursing unions said, hey, we want a required half-hour break for our nurses as a state law. So the nurses that are working are able to sit down, eat, go to the bathroom whenever they can. So if hospitals don't do that, they're violating a state law. Now, the woman that I'm talking about had no idea what life is like in a hospital. She thought that nurses were playing cards in a 12-hour shift. She said that that's ridiculous that we have to have this law because I know nurses are just sitting around. For the most part, that's not accurate at all. But again, you have this lawmaker voting no against a bill that will help the work environment of a lot of people in the medical field, mainly because she has no idea what the fuck she's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I really know what I'm talking about with this nursing thing. I'm learning more and more, and I'm having a more, I guess, like just I don't even know what you would call it. I guess I'm having a more of a realization how important nurses are just by talking to you, and at least getting some experience or hands-on information about what they have to deal with. I mean, the issues they amount to anything. There's an article here I'm looking at, emergency nursing. They're literally a voice for the community. I mean,
Yep.
it seems like how, first of all, with all your care and training that goes into dealing with patients on a day-to-day basis, you also come in with all these different types of emergency issues, whether it's a highway accident, whether it's the list goes on and on and on, drug use, all these types of traumas and these types of illnesses that are affecting the community around them at the hospital they work at. Now, an emergency nurse sees all this and brings this to the board, to everything, to the people that run the community, saying, hey, there are these challenges going on in the ER right now because of the problems that are facing in its local community. These need to be worked on. These roads need to be fixed so people aren't getting into car crashes and coming into the emergency room, and a dad doesn't die with his children being severely wounded or handicapped from a car accident. Like these different scenarios that pop up. And when a nurse or emergency nursing student is able to highlight this to the board or to the top people, the mayor, whoever, to get these problems faced, they're speaking for the voice of the community. People that are trying to get out there but don't have the professional, I guess, don't have the career title of being a nurse or a doctor that can literally give a logical representation of what the hell is happening around them.
Yeah. I mean, You're absolutely correct. Most of most of most of the shit that's going on can't usually be prevented. Most of it's not that high paced, depending on the day. Whenever I was in the ED, the majority of the cases, and granted this was February as a nursing student, the majority of the cases were flu related. Some alcoholic was coming down from a really bad hangover that could have killed him. Someone accidentally got ran over by a car, but that was also a hit and run. So the police were after to try to find this guy or just find the person that hit him. And the guy was completely stable, but he had a hematoma forming in his calf that could have killed him. So we had to life flight him to Hershey Medical Center. But when things come bad enough, yeah, you're absolutely correct. Correct when within our country, a very negative thing that just happened and hit poor communities that I keep bringing up is the opioid crisis. So yes, you have doctors and nurses coming up saying from the ED saying like, hey, we're having a lot of ODs. Is there any prevention that we can think of that can actually start helping people rather than keeping have the OD crisis keep increasing. And there are some communities that took it firsthand. So the one actually I was able to talk to you down in West Virginia. The EMS there, the EMTs found a program to try to help addicts out of their addiction rather than watching them die through the needle. But they couldn't have done it without state funding. So yes, a lot of that does. Yeah, we're heart and eyes of the community. You're damn right.
Well, like, first of all, there's a really good article with emergency nursing and all the types of issues that are faced. Like, we're going to talk about the workforce issues because there's surprisingly a lot of problems with the workforce industry when it comes to the nursing programs, at least. From 1992 through 2002, the number of emergency department visits increased by 23%, an increase from 89.8 million to 110.2 million visits annually, while the number of hospital EDs in the United States decreased about 15.1%. This rising pressure on EDs has been compounded by the national nursing shortages in the nation's health care workforce, inadequate access to primary care and specialty services, and the federally mandated open access to emergency medical care for all dedicated EDs by the Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act of 1986.
Yeah.
With a job where first of all, a career that you say you can't get a job in, and there's a shit ton of positions that are opening up where it seems nurses are more required. It seems like a lot of understanding what the national nursing shortage is that there's reports that 126,000 nursing positions are unfulfilled in hospitals, accounting for an overall vacancy of 13% for nursing positions. The U.S. Department of Health and Services conducted a national sample survey of registered nurses in 2000. Even though hospitals remain the major employer of nurses, a number of RNs employed nursing increased public or community health and ambulatory care roles, while the number of RNs employed in hospitals actually decreased by 7.3%. Nursing shortages were cited as a major concern by 90% of states in a study on health workforce shortages conducted. The reasoning why, one of the reasons is that now male positions in jobs other than nursing positions have been more accessible to women. So they're finding less nurses in hospitals because less women are going for the choice of they're a woman, the only good job they can get is being a nurse. That's ridiculous, but it's also true, stated in this article by the Emergency Nurses Association, the ENA.
What year was that written? I agree a little bit with that.
There's surveys stemming from 2000 to 2018.
Okay, that's interesting. That definitely has that 100% has a role in it. I don't think it's as significant as what they're saying. With what I'm dealing with right now, at least. the major thing that's happening right now is we can't get teachers to teach in programs, so we can't open up new nursing programs to combat the shortage crisis that we're about to get hit with here in 2024, 2025. We're going to be significantly hurt here in a little bit by the shortage of RNs.
Oh yeah, right here. Hey,
you can't.
The demand for nurses. It is estimated that by the year 2020, there will be at least 400,000 fewer nurses available to provide care than it is needed. The total demand for services will rise by the year 2025, when 68.3% of the current nursing workforce will be among the first of 78 million baby boomers reaching retirement age and enrolling in the Medicare program.
Right there. Yep, bingo. By 2025, we're going to be short 1 million nurses. And that's just a start. By 2025, we're going to be short 1 million RNs, and that's just a start.
And you know what the crazy thing is? The implication of these statistics are staggering, but the workforce issues aren't being addressed. They're not being resolved. People aren't looking into this stuff. So you guys are going completely. It's a problem that's rolling up onto your doorstep, and no one is taking the time or steps to handle this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that has something to do with it. But I know a lot of people that want to get into to be nursing, but they can't find a school, or it's very competitive to do this.
Why is it so competitive?
I don't know. If you're able and you're smart enough to do it, and we're in such a shortage, that, don't get me wrong, that's something I'll never understand personally. Right now, I want you to take a step back and think about, you said you just completed your associate's degree, right?
Yes, sir.
Congratulations. I know I told you that before, but congratulations.
Congratulations
on that.
I appreciate that, but I'm more happy with becoming an ordained minister under the Church of Bacon.
We'll talk about
my degree is not even hanging on the wall, but my minister license is hanging on my wall, so that just shows you that.
That's fun. I never put up my Penn State degree, but here, so I want you to think about this. So probably it was probably 5 years ago. It started 5 years ago, but 5 years ago and before, up until 5 years ago, you only had to have a 2-year degree for nursing, because that's where you get your clinical, hands-on learning care, right?
Wouldn't a lot of your education, though, even though you can get a lot from the system, I guess, but wouldn't a lot of it be on hands-on experience? Because you kind of, it's like being a mechanic. I can tell you how to fix a car, but you're not going to truly be really good at what you do if you're not experiencing different scenarios every day.
Yeah, that's 100. Yeah, that's 100% accurate. You get your hands-on feeling of changing a Foley, putting in a Foley, starting an IV, taking out an IV, passing medications. That's all. That needs to be hands-on experience. But so up until 5 years, 5 to 7 years ago, a lot of places were okay with having, a 2-year degree, because that's where you get your clinical experience. Well, now a lot of hospitals are pushing for people to get their 4-year degree of nursing. The difference between a 2-year degree and a 4-year degree in nursing is all online management classes. That's it. So I don't understand why we're pushing. We're going to be hit here with such a shortage, and yet we're pushing people to get a 4-year degree when a 2-year will do. A lot of this stuff doesn't make sense to me.
Because I think that falls on the society's expectation of how much schooling you need to have to be a nurse or be something that is a healthcare provider, which I think is ridiculous.
Which I understand that, and I understand if we had a surplus of nurses and to be competitive, you have to get a 4-year degree. That I get, sure.
Yeah, but when you're hurting for people and you need more nurses and you're going to be almost 1 million nurses short, you have to think like, hey,
1 million by 2025, and that's just the start. Whenever we're in that deep in need, we're going the exact opposite way. Now, don't get me wrong, you still have to study, and you still have to pass your boards, the NCLEX, to be, make sure you're qualified to be a nurse. Not everyone can do this, I should say that. And we do have a standard level of book smarts and everything like that someone has to pass. I'm not disagreeing that we shouldn't have the boards. I 100% think we should have the boards, but to go from a 2-year to 4-year degree where there's no more clinical aspect to learn when we're facing a shortage is ridiculous in my mind. It's the dumbest thing in terms of nursing and healthcare. It's one of the dumbest things we're about to face. And mark my words, I mean, we'll replay this here in 5 years ago. We're going to get smacked in the face here soon. 5 to 7 years, we're going to get smacked in the motherfucking face because we're short 1 million nurses.
I think just with talking with you and doing a little bit of research while talking to you, I see so much, I guess, that we need to kind of fix in the situation. We need to look more at nurses and people of this position of being like superheroes, because that's what they are. At least to a lot of children, I've already figured that out, especially a kid going through cancer and probably thinks of his nurse as a superhero. But if you look at the levels of job dissatisfaction that requires or is with the nursing job and how inadequate, or first of all, just how these job satisfaction varies in these hospitals, it says the aggregate levels of job satisfaction vary by the setting where nurses work. Nurses working in hospitals report the lowest levels of overall job satisfaction at 67%. Even at 83%.
From a lot of that, it sounds like, to me, now, again, this is a national survey, so I can't speak for every single person, but from what I hear from a lot of, friends and family that are in any healthcare field, it's management. Is the manager going to listen to me? And are the hospital boards, the hospital administrations going to listen to what we want?
Yeah, well, it's also the tools the hospital has, too.
As healthcare is a for-profit machine, which should never be the case, but it is right now. So what we're dealing with, even in Lewistown, what we were dealing with is the state requirement for patient-nurse ratio is 1 to 5. So every nurse on the floor, you can only have up to 5 patients.
Yeah.
Well, to save money, so they were fibbing some numbers, and I don't even know how they were getting away with it, but they were having up to 7 patients per 1 nurse.
Yeah. Well, that leads into what I was
overworking. A lot of the nurses were like, "Oh, hey, like I'm okay with having 5 patients, 6 for maybe 2 hours if you need it." No, these patients were going through, or these nurses were going through the entire shift with 7 patients.
Yeah, Nate, hold on. Let me say this real quick. With the job dissatisfaction thing I was talking about, it says that even at 83%, the job satisfaction level among those in nursing education only approaches the level of job satisfaction in the general population. It says inadequate staffing, heavy workloads, increased use of overtime, and inadequate wages are cited as leading contributors to the rising nursing shortage.
Yep. Yeah, I believe that.
This is from the nursingcenter.com, by the way. This is all Lippincott Nursing Center. I don't know if you know what that is.
I don't. I follow a lot of similar ones to that. The American ANA or something, American Nursing Association. Shit similar to that. But yeah, go ahead.
It's just the amount of pressure that goes onto a nurse, and the fact that people can think, "Oh, our hospital's short this many staff, so we'll just give everybody a couple extra patients." Like, do you expect them to do their job well if you're giving them a workload so heavy that they can barely function or get on with their own life? Because what happens when somebody doesn't sleep or doesn't eat? They start to become delirious. How often are you having nurses treating patients who are completely delirious, going off 64 hours of no sleep?
There are studies now that are focusing on, again, not just nurses, but the healthcare, mental health, and people within the healthcare and the mental errors they make, and they figured out that having an extra RN on the floor reduces medical errors by like 30 to 40%. So the more RNs you have on the floor, the less ratio it is, the safer the patients are. But it costs a lot more money to do that. So again, if we're if this wasn't a for-profit business, we could actually start worrying about patient safety. But because of where we are right now, that's just not a thing anymore, which is pathetic. It angers me, and it's very sad to hear. Because yes, exactly the scenario you were talking about has happened. It's happened to my friends.
Yeah,
they have 6 patients, and one of them is really bad.
Well, 25% of all the EDs in the United States, a research study came out demonstrated appropriate staffing is essential to safe patient care, as well as nursing role satisfaction. An increase in 1 hour of RN staffing per patient day produced a significant 8.9 decrease in the odds of pneumonia. Adverse events were associated with longer patient stays and, for some events, a greater probability of death during hospitalization. In addition, nurses are more likely to experience burnout and job dissatisfaction when level of resources needed to provide safe care to patients is insufficient to meet the patient's basic needs.
Yeah, yep. You're reading everything that I was living and that my friends are currently living right now. Yeah,
See, I'm glad I'm hitting the right bases of knowledge here when I'm doing my research, because, like I said, I'm open to all forms of interpretation. You gave me a whole nother light on the nursing industry where I look at it in a whole different way, and I thank you for that. But I'm also trying to make sure I'm getting all my bases and information here correct, or at least in agreement with what you think or what you believe, because you have true experience and information, firsthand account information on all the problems that nurses do face. So I don't have any of that. I don't know exactly what it really means to understand the whole hospital life. I don't like hospitals. I stay away from them because I've had bad experiences with all of them. But that's not going to stop me from looking at it from the other perspective of someone that realizes that how many issues that, first of all, nurses and people are dealing with when it comes to, let's talk about capacity and overcrowding. How many, it seems, injuries are occurring more nowadays. There are people covered in freaking hospitals and they're staying there and they're not getting out. So more and more keep adding on top of those people. Millions of people are going into hospitals every single day, and less people are leaving those hospitals, whether it's fully functional or dead. It doesn't matter. But when you have one nurse who starts off with 3 patients and is now caring for 7, that's a ridiculous amount of pressure to put on anybody.
Yeah, and what you were talking about, overstaffing, or not, sorry,
overcrowding,
never overstaffing, but what you're talking about,
overcrowding,
not overpopulation, but overrun hospitals. A lot of that, you hit on actually probably, I don't know, it feels like 10, 15 minutes before, but about the other study that you were talking about, in the ED, there's a lot of people in the ED that shouldn't be there. That should go see their primary care doctor if they have one and if they can afford it. That's where they should go first. So our emergency departments are being overrun by people that really don't need to be there. That we have other urgent care centers. We have, primary care centers that you have to call and make an appointment to, that they should see first before they show up in the emergency department screaming bloody murder when they just have the flu. So that problem stems from many problems, whether they have health insurance, whether they can pay for a primary care doctor, whether they want to pay that deductible, whether they can get in and all that stuff. And a lot of it also has to do with patient education of, I have the flu. Well, as nurses, we're really not going to do a whole lot for you. We're going to give you probably one medication and tell you to sleep it off, just like you would do at your house. But now that being said, I mean, we could reduce a lot of what's happening if we have more education and more patient care providers available at a good, at a reasonable cost. But yeah, I mean, I've had scenarios where we were in an emergency department. We were full, the hospital was full, and we had 18 people waiting outside.
Yeah. I mean, I think not to completely.
Someone from the hospital had to be discharged before we can even bring someone else in.
Yeah.
We were at capacity.
I think that the weird part is where a hospital can be completely understaffed and have an overcrowded population of patients. There's always constantly in the world, there's going to be someone that's hurt and there's going to be someone sick going through something. So the idea that
Yep.
nurses are going to be inevitably just be not a thing is not true. We're always going to
No,
need
yeah,
nurses. We're
yeah,
always going to
definitely
need
not.
doctors. Well, a basic.
But I guess and that's one of the points is what I was making is, if you just have the flu and you come into the emergency room and we take care of you, what are the chances there were 10 people like you that were happy, and one of them we really needed to focus on?
Well, a lot of people are being hypochondriacs because of freaking WebMD and all these places that tell you have cancer immediately, even though you probably just ate some bad sushi or something.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think a lot of the procedures that can be done to benefit or at least create a culture that recognizes emergency department nurses practices and promotes interdisciplinary collaboration, open communication are kind of stuff going with encourage constructive, productive, and safer work environments. Like a lot of problems do happen too when people, like we were saying, people don't get sleep, people don't get food in their bodies. Next thing you know, they're getting argumentative with other coworkers. Next thing you know, it's creating workplace violence. It's also bringing on to the patients. And there's so many factors. We look at nurses like superheroes, but they are people as well. They do make mistakes. It does happen, but they shouldn't be prosecuted for them. It seems like if a person helps you every single step of the way and everything works and your life is going great, then one thing goes wrong, they're so willing to turn against you and go against you and everything, end up suing you for mispractice or something. I think it's ridiculous to think that. You're putting your life in somebody else's hands. That means you let them hold the key. You let them understand they have to do what they have to do to try to improve your health. You're coming to them for help. They didn't come to you.
Yeah, and don't get wrong. We do have a national population of 320 million people. So it's hard for a lot of those people to be even on the same page of half decent human beings. Just like any other work environment, you're going to have customers or whatever the case may be, people that are just shitty people. They come in, they sprain their ankle and everything's your fault. And then a lot of the articles I'm reading now are nurses and doctors getting yelled at because the patient's health insurance doesn't cover something that needs to be done, and then it's the nurses and doctors' fault when they had absolutely nothing to do with that. But so I mean, it's just so it's something I'm not. It's something that hurts, but at the same time, going into any profession, let alone RNs, like you're kind of expected that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just, you got to expect.
A lot of what people don't understand is you guys should be definitely, or nurses in general should just be awarded things like simple things to help, I guess, professional accomplishments. You do something, you do a good job, you should have a pat on the back. You shouldn't just be like, oh, that was something I had to do and then move on to the next thing. You should be like commended for what you did. You should be like, good job, There should be, there should be more collaboration with getting nurses' experiences on things that need to be developed in the hospital. Ask the people that are dealing in the shit, in the actual, that are working with these problems. Ask what can be improved in their hospital. They're going to tell you. Hey, we haven't had snacks in the vending machine for over almost a year now. Like, what the hell? I just want a simple granola bar or Kit Kat before I go back to work. Is that a cool thing to get? Maybe get some more hospital beds. The fact that they're taking out hospital beds for staff to sleep in to create more space for patients. All right, are we looking at the hospital as a money grab thing now? Or are we going to start caring about as much as the patients as we're going to have to care about our employees?
Yeah, and I 100. I mean, you're exactly right with what you're talking about there. Just because you're definitely right about hospitals, but let alone on a broader aspect, you're right just on a very basis managerial level of you can apply this everywhere. If you keep your employees happy, if you listen to them, productivity is probably going to increase. And
you're going to be able to do your job more effectively.
Increase. So like, I mean, as long as you're a head manager and you hear about people's complaints, you hear about what your workers need, whether that be in the hospital, whether that be doing something else. A lot of things are going to be improved if you just listen to people and listen to their complaints and try to make their work life better.
You know what, Nate? All I have to say, man, is you are. I mean, the fact that you have the passion to pursue such something that is seemed to be looked down on, mostly because it's misunderstood and nobody really truly understands the amount of pressure that amounts onto a nursing person. And I have to say, I really do appreciate your willingness to help the world in this way, man, because it's definitely something that is interesting and it's definitely something that is needed. And I want you to know, from everything from our relationship to what you are going to do in the future, you're going to amount to so many things, dude. You're going to get your goals accomplished, man. It might be a little bit later than you expected, but I'm telling you, dude, you have the mindset to accomplish your goals, and that's the one thing why I think everything's going to work out for you, because I know you, and I know for a fact, as much as you like to say nothing happened to you at Penn State, the one thing you did pull out of there besides something else was the whole idea you are a good person and you have this willingness to help others, and I know you will accomplish it.
Yeah, I one greatly appreciate those kinds of words. But yeah, don't thank me for getting into the profession yet. Thank me whenever I graduate. I should have. What hurts, and I've told you this before, but I should have graduated this time last year. So
you got to drop that.
Penn State had nothing to do with it. It was a school in Lewistown.
Okay,
that had nothing to do with Penn State. But
you got to realize, I understand where you're coming from with what could have been. Stop looking at what could have been and what you should have done, what should have happened, what should have already been happening. Look at, you're doing it now and you're gonna get it done. Whether you think it's on hold, but it's not gone, man. It's gonna fucking happen. And I know you, Nate, and I know for a fact you're gonna fucking make it happen. Because if one thing knows, when Nate gets his mind set to something, shit happens. I've worked with you in the shit. We've witnessed accidents together. Hell, you witnessed my jet ski accident where I thought I was gonna be paralyzed. We have been in the shit together doing jet skis. We have seen the side of people that a lot of people don't see. We have, I've witnessed you saying something. I've seen your aggressive side. I've seen when you go out and you yell at a customer to get their shit together. Like, I've seen you get your ass in gear and get like, all right, this is what's got to happen. We got to get this done. I've seen you at the like you said, with emergency nursing, the whole on spontaneous, having to be in the moment, like go, go, go. I've seen that with you, and I see you working it, and it's so fluent and so natural that very few people, me myself included, have that ability to kind of think on our fucking toes, man. And it's so important. And I think as long as you have that, you already have accomplished more than anybody I know. And I know your goals, your personal goals, you are going to accomplish. It's going to happen. And don't ever think that I'm not there for you. And don't ever think that you are less of yourself from where you should be at. Okay? Because you are going to accomplish many great things.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate that. That's always nice to hear. I don't know if I completely believe all that yet. I will whenever I'm working finally as an RN, then I'll believe it. But until then, I just gotta get there.
Well, when you get there, guess what? You can come up to me and say, "Well, you were right, Rob," and I'll be like, "Yep," and then I'm gonna punch you right in the nuts. That's just gonna happen.
I'd be okay with that.
Dude, hey man, I appreciate you being on my podcast and at least enlightening me and a little bit of people about like just your life and also the nursing program, man. I had no idea about a lot of this stuff. I'm actually going to read a little bit more about some of this stuff.
Yeah, if you have any more questions, hit me up, call me, do whatever, and we can continue talking if you're really more that much curious, and we'll keep talking about it.
For sure, dude. And I always try and listen to the advice of elderly people when they say don't trust the guy with the Pennsylvania State tattoo. But you know what? You're an okay guy to trust, Nate. And like I said, I appreciate you being on my podcast, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me.